Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Tea Time, the podcast. I really enjoy saying that intro, but I'm rusty. I'm not gonna lie. I'm rusty and I can feel it. I'm not just rusty, but it felt weird. And I'm wondering, did that feel weird because it's been a while and I'm rusty? So, all of this is going to make sense. This episode is titled Life, Business, and Podcast Update. Um, I felt called to record this episode because if I don't address this, I don't know when I'll record a podcast episode. The last time I posted a podcast episode, I remember just like I love podcasting. If you've been here for a while, you've heard me say that. Like I love it. Even when like I'm away from the podcast, I miss podcasting. I love this what I do here, but it's a lot to maintain. A podcast from a marketing promotional perspective has so many moving pieces, so many things to create, and I am just not in that space anymore where I have the drive to do all of those things or do all of these things. I am all about, well, of late, ever since last year, where it's more of like, is this necessary? And it may sound lazy and it may sound like I'm doing the bare minimum, but I just really am not in this season of my life about killing out myself. I do what actually pushes the needle forward. Not saying that this doesn't, but I just feel like, okay, if I have to make this, I think I'm just really measuring everything. And it's kind of good and bad because sometimes you can't over measure. So, for example, when you publish a podcast episode, it's awesome, it's great, it's low maintenance. But it's a two-sided sword where it's like, okay, it's easy to record, upload, publish, and call it a day. But then to really properly approach a podcast, you have to create the artwork, create the content around the specific podcast episode. You have to make all these different graphics, etc., etc. You have to make these audiograms, and well, now with reels, like you want to make reels as it relates to that. Like there's just so many distribution pieces, and with everything that's happening in the online space, especially on the platform Instagram, where a lot of us like pretty much lived for a while as online business owners or small business owners, like with everything that's happening, it's like, is it worth it? Does it even make sense anymore, right? And I just wish I could just publish and call that a day. Like with YouTube, like you publish and you can share the link, and you don't really have to make like an audiogram or things like that. Like it's just different, and I don't want to like spend a lot of time super like deep diving and breaking it down, all of what goes into a podcast versus YouTube, because that is not what this episode is about. Maybe I could do an episode on that sometime, like podcasting versus YouTube and how the pros and cons, right? If that's something that you want to hear about, definitely send me a DM on Instagram and be like, hey, I listened to your life, business, and podcast update, and I would love to hear about podcasting versus YouTube. Now, for me, it's all about what is going to give me the most return then and there. And I feel like TikTok has like taken a lot of attention from me personally, and I think from a lot of business owners. And for me, I'm in this space of like testing everything, and TikTok is a great place to test stuff. So like, okay, podcasting versus YouTube. Someone may ask for an episode, but then I would rather just make a quick short form piece of video content. Anyway, so the update is I sometimes feel like I'm fallen out of love with this podcast because I am now in a season where I have finally recognized that everything is messy. And everything is messy because I'm definitely no longer the same business owner. I don't have the same ideals as I did before. The vision has evolved. I wouldn't say it has changed. It has evolved, and my approach to doing things has changed. And I'll get deeper into that as this podcast episode goes along. If you're into divine masculine and divine feminine energies, it's stuff along that line. So I should give you a bit of insight and intrigue. And if not, well, you could stop listening from here if this isn't your type of thing, right? Um, Things are changing everywhere, right? Instagram is changing. The online space is constantly changing. I just saw yesterday a reel from a coach named Jerisha Hawk. You may not know her. And she was saying, like, you know, when it comes to business, period, especially in the online space, every 3 years there's a shift. And she was on to a really good point because there was a huge shift with the pandemic, and so much has changed with just that alone. Like, that's a huge life event for everybody. And then Instagram is changing every other day on a whole. These platforms are changing, and it's a lot to keep up with. And this is not to complain about platforms. Like, this is definitely not that episode. It's the fact that the online space, period, is shifting. The way we are doing business has shifted, and we are all in different seasons, right? And as such, with change, we don't really like change like that. So I have changed, I have evolved. I know that there was a massive shift for me in 2021. Like 2020 is when, the pandemic hit, and things were pretty much normal for me in terms of the way I would do business, in terms of my goals. I remained internally not very changed, and I feel like I kind of thrived in 2020. And if you've listened to some of my episodes between 2020 to now, I would have shared that. And then 2021 hit, and I think 2021 was the year of that shift for me and evolution. And I look around at, like, even my Instagram and everything. I had, like, all of these cohesive systems, and, like, I had a routine. Even when I just went full time in my business in 2016, and I jumped out on Facebook and doing lives, like, even that was a very nice, like, routine. And when I'm saying routine, I keep thinking of, like, riding a tide and, surfing, and you're just surfing, and you're going, and you have, like, this groove. And, like, right now, I can't say that I'm in any set groove. I am in a space of experimenting a lot. And I am quite happy with that, to be very honest. But at the same time, I do go through these shifts of doubt and judging myself and asking myself, am I just kind of, like, all over the place? Am I helter skelter? But sometimes it feels uncomfortable. Change feels uncomfortable. Trying new things, as much as I'm enjoying it, does feel uncomfortable because you're doing all of that publicly, right? And you just don't know, like, how is that being received? Are people looking on and they don't like that? But people need this space to try new things. And who doesn't like it? They don't like it. So that's, like, when I have those thoughts, I am just like, well, there are some people are going to continue on the journey with you, and others are going to fall off. There's those who are going to like it. There are those who are going to question it. There are those who are not going to understand it. And, we just can't be the same. I just can't approach content creation, for example, and the online space the exact same way that I would have a few years ago. And it's not just me, it's everybody, because everything is changing, right? So what I would have done a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, like, I can't pressure myself to be like, well, Cassia, this is not how you used to do things. This is not what people know you for, etc., etc. Now, I might not be making any sense whatsoever to some people, because it's like, maybe because I'm so close to it, I am having all of these thoughts, and on the outside, people might not be thinking anything remotely close to that. And I do appreciate those who get it and who get me and who like what I'm doing and who would message me and tell me, "Oh, Cassie, I love everything that you're doing right now." Da 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 da. Like y'all are the true, MVPs out there. So okay, so that is one of the updates. Things are changing, things are evolving, and so we must change and adapt, right? So, have grace with yourself. Like everything that I'm sharing, I don't think that I have to say that you take what you need from that for yourself as well, right? Don't pressure yourself. Um, One of the things I want to address is, which by the time you are listening to this episode, I might have already published this on my Instagram stories. But either way, one of the things that I want to address is I do feel a bit of feeling uncomfortable posting and this evolution. I feel like there's this like shedding of old skin. And it feels uncomfortable because, again, you're doing this publicly and my messaging has changed. So, one rule of thumb when it comes to content creation is repurposing old content. And for a while, I was like, Cassia, why are you need to repurpose content. You need to go back and find like your best performing posts and repurpose some content. Find posts that I just genuinely want to repurpose and repurpose content. But then I didn't, right? I just keep making new ones because I always have new things to say and a new perspective and, things like that. Like, content isn't hard for me. What's hard is stopping myself from feeling like I have to create new things when I could just repurpose the old stuff, right? So anyway, I finally sat down and I went through and I felt cringe. I felt cringe because it was just like, ew, this messaging just does not align with me anymore. It feels weird for me to come out and post this. So as much as people might, or some people might like this type of content, this doesn't align with me. And that was just such a point of like an epiphany for me because it was just like such a self-discovery moment, such a brand discovery moment for me because if you are familiar with the Basic to Branded workbook, my principles and the things that I do as a brand strategist, brand discovery is a huge part of building your brand. And you always have to come back every couple of months, every couple of years, and do an audit. And you're constantly discovering and rediscovering. So that was a moment in discovering my evolution to this point. And the content is not in alignment because if you have evolved, certain pieces of content, maybe a lot of your old content, or the things that you do, or the things that you stand for, like if your values have changed and you are evolving, obviously some things, just some messaging has to change. And the old messaging, or I wouldn't say all of it, right? So some of the old messaging just clearly doesn't apply. So I was just like, I could look at old messaging, look at old posts and be inspired and ask myself, what is a new twist on this? Or what do I think about this now in order to create a revamped version of this post or this piece of content and take it from there. But it was just such a eye opener when I did that quote unquote exercise of repurposing content, right? So my old content, I would say, was very masculine. It was very much of this world where, it's hustle culture. I if you've been around for a while, you would have heard me talk about the fact that people are freaking burnt out after the pandemic. And I feel like there's this huge awakening when it comes to like rest and restoration and relaxation and filling your cup. So I shared a post. I wish my phone was here next to me, but it is charging. But I shared a post in my Instagram stories today, and I'm gonna paraphrase because I don't want to like try to find it on the computer and then I lose this recording for some reason. So to paraphrase, it was this tweet on a black background, and it was basically a tweet from someone speaking about they have no interest in climbing corporate ladders and pursuing titles and these accolades. And I have been saying this, maybe not publicly, but I have been saying this, in my little conversations to other colleagues. I have been saying this, like, this constant achieving, it's tiring. And it all comes back to me having hinged my personal identity to my work, to the point where when your identity and self-worth is tied to your work, it's going to be detrimental to your mental health. If you haven't listened to my mental health episodes, there are a few, um they're not too far back. I may link them in the show notes so that it's easier to find. But I touched on mental health, right? And when you start to separate your self-worth from your work, separate your self-worth from your work, I think that is where the desire to constantly achieve starts to subside. Because you were trying to find fulfillment, and I'm just speaking, in general terms, like you're trying to find this like fulfillment in life through your work. And there's nothing wrong with being fulfilled through your work. But when it starts to consume you, it's like on social media where you that dopamine high of getting likes. You post because you want to feel that dopamine feeling. And I feel like when it comes to our work, we just self-identify in our work so much that we are constantly pushing and pushing and pushing in order to I don't know, fill something. And when you start to really point to yourself as a person, as an individual, and you find fulfillment in other spaces of your life, that desire and drive tends to subside. I don't know, that's at least for me, but that has been some of my observations. So, masculine energy versus feminine energy. So, if you're not familiar with what that means, it has nothing to do with your gender per se, most of the time, right? I'm not an expert on this, but this is what I have learned along my journey, that we all have both masculine and feminine energy. Some have more than others. I need to slow down. I think that's my cue to pause. Let me just pause and take a sip of water, because I have all of this stuff inside of me to stay, and I just need to get it all out. And I feel like the words or the thoughts are coming faster than my mouth can keep up. So let me just take a pause. Whew. Right. So we all have both of it, right? Now, if you've made it this far, thank you for making it this far. I appreciate you. You probably find this episode somewhat intriguing and interesting. So I'm just going to pause again, that if you are liking where this is going, screenshot, share to your Instagram stories and tag me and let me know that you are enjoying this episode. All right? More good stuff is coming, so hang in with me, all right? Because we're going to talk about possibly a new podcast. I don't know yet. But before I get to that, let me wrap up this train of thought, because it's all going to make sense. It's all going to make sense. Hang in with me. So we all have masculine and feminine energy, whether you are male or female. So just, hold on to that thought for a moment. And the world by default is very masculine. we value masculinity the most. You know, people who lean into their masculine energy seems to get the most reward, and when you lean into feminine, like there's always this association of feminine energy being weak and masculine energy meaning strong, which irks the living daylights out of me because I am more of a feminine energy, right? So my old content was very masculine and of this world, and I'm bringing more of my calm strength. And I say that I choose those words very intentionally, right? I thought to put soft strength, but no, it's not soft. Well, it is soft, but it's more calm strength, calm confidence, right? And when I say my old content was very masculine, I don't say that to throw any shade on my older content because all of that was part of my journey. It just doesn't align with me today. And I enjoy that period of my life. So I am working on a wellness brand, right? And I was trying to create certain slogans. Um, Not to give too much away, back in 2016, 2017, everybody was on the girl boss train, and we make our own money, and we this and we that, and independent. And I had these boss lady mugs. Like, boss lady was a very big theme for me back then. And in creating this wellness brand, of course, I wanted to like honor that space and that time and that period of my life. So I was like, yeah, let's just bring back a new and improved boss lady piece of merch. And I made it. I like it. I like the design and everything. But when it was time to really send this for proofing, I was like, what does this even mean to me anymore? What does this mean to me in this season of my life? Because everything has a story, right? It's all about the storytelling, right? So, I mean, that's how you build brands, through storytelling. You must have like real meaning and etc. etc. So, it's not just asking myself this question from the purpose of like marketing, but I'm building something with intention, brick by brick. Again, I am a brand strategist, and I'm not just saying that to position like like being an expert, but it's about my love for, it's a craft, it's an art. And if I'm going to be doing this, obviously I'm going to take my time and create this and craft this piece of art. So in doing that, it's like, what the hell does this mean anymore? And what does this contribute to this wellness brand? Oh no, wellness brand story, and like, sure, people may like it, they may buy this piece of merch because they resonate with it, but how does it fit into the brand story for me, and what this brand means, and what does it stand for? How does this fit into the story? And I immediately felt like this is not an alignment. Just like the piece of content, this is not an alignment. I can't do this. This is not feeling right. So I pushed it aside. Maybe I may bring it forward. It may have a season for it, but that's just not the season for the launch of this brand. And again, it was another period of just recognizing my evolution of where I am right now, personally and business wise, and as a creator. So that was very masculine. Boss lady, independent, make your own money, you don't ask for help, don't need a man for anything, da 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 da. It's constantly exerting, do. And that's not in alignment with what my mindset is now, which is of like pouring into self and being able to ask for help and rely on support And I don't mean support being financial support from a man or physical support from a man per se. It just means, support in general, support from your team, support from your assistant, being able to delegate tasks, support in being able to receive. Somebody gives you something, and we tend to be like, oh, no, 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 I could do it myself. Like, it's a whole shift in mindset is where I am and where I'm going, and what I'm like, my values as a brand and a business owner, like all of that is changing and evolving. So even this podcast, Tea Time, was born out of that masculine energy era. And just yesterday, I had to like Google what energy is sassiness. Tea Time was born out of sassiness. We're gonna dish the tea, da 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 da. And you know, I'm regrouping. Just give me a moment. I am regrouping. And it just comes back to what everything is messy right now because everything is changing. Like, you look at Instagram and you get frustrated with it because it's going through, air quotes, growing pains. Things are messy when it's changing and it's evolving and it's going through this metamorphosis. And regardless of how you feel about Instagram right now, it might, the dust may settle and it may be amazing when they go through their changes and they stop. Hopefully that they recognize that yes, change is good, but there is a period of letting the dust settle and allowing the platform or anything that you're making to like give it a chance to reap the benefits. But if you're constantly tinkering, it's going to be a hot mess. And that's where I feel like I am right now, where everything is seems like it's all over the place. And as I create more and more short form content, I know that going deep versus wide and surface level, which that is pretty much what short form content is, it doesn't really allow you to go super deep. And I feel like there are certain spaces and places for deep content. So while you can create longer pieces of content on Instagram and TikTok, are people really paying attention to to long form content? Long form content is still very much on podcasts. It's still very much on YouTube. And if you follow me on stories, you would have heard me say over and over and over, I really want to get back on YouTube. I have a vision for my YouTube and what I want it to look like. And even that is a work in progress in terms of like the vision. And I'm going back and forth with that. And I'm like figuring out like, what is my Instagram gonna be like right now? And I think I've finally figured out that my Instagram, my personal brand page, like there's so many different ways to approach a personal brand page. And there's so many strategies. There's just so many strategies. Because you might think, oh, well, you're going to do personal brand and then that's it. There's so many different ways to approach a personal branded page. And I think I finally figured out that with the direction that Instagram is going, I'm going to keep it as a creator page through and through in terms of the account type. So I'm going to keep my personal brand page to a creator type. I experimented with it for 1 week as a business type, and then I realized this needs to be creator, and I need to make the time to nurture and create the content, like really treat like my other, because I created a separate business account for business, and it's strictly gonna have all of the like business type content only, right? And the personal brand page is where you utilize your personal brand to funnel people to all of your other interests. So it's gonna be a mix of business and the lifestyles, not lifestyle, the wellness type of content, right? So in order to honor that, I realized, okay, this page definitely needs to be a more lifestyle type of personal brand page. And like I kind of finally figured it out. How did I figure it out? By publicly trying new things and seeing what feels right, even if it felt uncomfortable, right? So my old content was very masculine, as I said earlier. And I'm shifting more to injecting more of my femininity on the page. So it's going to be lifestyle. It's going to be more of the feminine. I'm going to be talking about, rest, wellness, just sharing all of those things from like a lifestyle perspective. And in my stories, I talk a lot about coffee, but I started sharing like me like doing upgrades and interior decorating. It started with interior decorating my room, and I'm looking forward to bringing a little bit more of that to not just the stories aspect, but to the feed. And recently, it looks like I'm going to be doing plants, pots, and just decorating. And like, I'm just discovering so many different other layers, even of my personal self. And it's really fun. And that's just life and evolution and things changing. And it's nice. So I hope you guys, stick with me on this journey and that you enjoy that type of content as well. And if it's not your cup of tea, then that's okay as well. I guess we have reached a point in our journey where, you know, we've kind of outgrown, that this isn't what you're interested in, and that's cool. And it's okay. So, my other thing I wanted to talk about as we shift into more of that feminine content is like, where does this podcast even fit anymore? Because I could keep the podcast right here and pivot and it change and evolve, and tea time could mean something completely different. Tea time means like sass, like, listen, I'm gonna dish the tea, I'm gonna tell you da 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 da. But tea time can also be nourishing. You pour like your nice cup of herbal tea and you relax and you talk about more other things, right? More of the wellness type of stuff. But then it's like I have all of these business episodes, and I feel like I want to keep this podcast as business only content as well. And then I'm also like playing with the idea, well, okay, not playing with the, yes, playing with the idea and figuring out, because like I said, evolving, we're changing, and just really trying to figure out what the structure of everything looks like anymore moving forward. And it's like, do I want to create a new podcast and just lean into the concept of coffee? Because the fact is, like, coffee is a big part of my brand, um, personally and professionally. Like, it just fits. And coffee does for me what tea does for other people in terms of like relax. So like I even thought of like having like coffee with Cassia, and I tried playing with the concept of that on TikTok, and I have fun doing that. So I have to remember to continue that series. But I do like doing coffee with Cassia. But then every now and again, I knew I would want to publish business podcasts, and I would have like updates from time to time. So, but then I don't like the idea of having to maintain two podcasts or have to say, well, oh yeah, well, I have two podcasts, da 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 da. I have this one for this and this one for that. Like, no, I rather just commit to one, and maybe this could be the last episode of Tea Time, and then I move on to something else. And but this podcast lives on and people could continue to listen because a lot of the content here is evergreen. So yeah, the update with regards to the podcast is I'm trying to figure out what to do with this at this moment. And I would really appreciate your feedback. Like, this is a two-way conversation. So I would love to hear what you all think about it as well. But I just feel like I want to keep having the podcast open to publish business content. But then at the same time, I do want to like, there's freedom in starting anew and starting new things and starting afresh, because I really want to focus more on YouTube in any case. And my YouTube will just have different categories where we would have the business topics, we'll have the lifestyle topics, we'll have the wellness topics, etc., etc., and then organize them according to like playlists. And probably just not come back to this podcast. I have no idea. But when I published my last episode, meaning the one before this, I intentionally knew I wasn't going to push and rush to record more episodes, even though like I have a proper content calendar of topics lined up. And it's like, but do I want to do this? Do I want to record this and then have to promote each episode and break it up and do this, that, and the other? Like, I rather shift my focus from creating long form content via podcasts to YouTube. And yeah, that's where I stand right now. So after this episode, I don't know what's going to happen, but who knows? We'll see. All I could say right now is that I want to focus on YouTube again. I do enjoy it. It just takes effort. So the thing with podcasting is it's easy to get it to just hop on the mic, record, and it's live. But then you have the post-production aspect of a podcast. Whereas with YouTube, it's the complete, well, not the complete opposite, but it's somewhat of the opposite, where you have to put effort into getting dressed, getting ready, making sure there's no interruptions, you have the background, like, and then you have to edit. But then once it's live, you don't really have to create any promotional like graphics or audiograms. Like, you could just keep creating your content and then refer to the fact that, hey, another episode is live. Like, that's YouTube. So for right now, I would say that I am really making a resolve. I mean, I have been making this resolve for the past couple months that I really have this strong intention to get back into YouTube, and I will, one way or the other, because I do believe in long form content. I know long form content is where I thrive, and while short form content is awesome and I enjoy it, most of the time I have a hard time. I feel a bit unfulfilled because I can't really go deep some of the times because of the way short form content is made up. So short form content is great to create that bite-sized pieces of content to funnel people where they can go deeper if they want to go deeper, which I have done. Excuse me. There are people who have these really trending, or not trending, viral reels, but then they would say, I went deeper into this concept on my podcast. Go check it out. You know? But I feel like I need to choose between podcast and YouTube right now, because yeah, I feel like I have to just choose. I just have to choose because I don't have the bandwidth. And like I said, I'm in this season of ease and flow, as cliche as that may sound. And ease and flow might sound to some as lazy, but it's more. It more means to me working smartly and not doing unnecessary ish. All right. So yeah, I think I covered all of my points. And hopefully I did not sound like scattered and all over the place. I mean, at least to me, I think I made sense. um, so yeah, I am in a space of evolution. I am experimenting. I am trying new things, and things on the outside may look messy because a metamorphosis is happening where you're shedding old skin and there's still remnants of old things, and some of those old things will stay as we move forward into new things, but it's all like this big mush. No wonder people use the term metamorphosis, because that is exactly what happens to a butterfly when it, well, a caterpillar, when it turns into a butterfly. That metamorphosis, you literally, the caterpillar literally turns to mush and then it emerges. So that's what we will call the messy middle. Mush is messy, and I'm having fun creating a beautiful mess. So, for those of you who like listening to me verbally talk out loud this process and share with you all this process at the same time, then thanks for listening. Thanks for making it this far. That is the update of where things are going. So, overall, my personal brand is going to look more like a lifestyle type of page. I shouldn't say my personal brand, but my personal brand page is just evolving on Instagram. And I am kind of separating, slowly but surely separating things more to its own spaces in terms of like business, and just this is just in messy middle, and I'm happy to have you all on this journey with me, and it was fun sharing this update. So if you enjoyed this episode, like I said, and you've made it this far, I would love to know that you listened to this episode. By, you could just, you, even if you don't want to screenshot and share, send me a DM. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So anyway, I can't even say until the next one, because I don't know if there'll be a next one. I don't know what's gonna happen next. But just hang around. I'll let you all know what's up. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on TikTok, connect with me on LinkedIn, and you will be updated. I'll also link to my email list. I haven't really been focusing on that because, again, so much is changing. But there'll be lots of updates. But the best place to like hang with me is still on Instagram. Funny enough, in Instagram stories, that's where I will come and be like, okay, this is what's happening. So if this podcast is done and done, then you'll know on Instagram. Oh, and of course, follow me on YouTube, because I'm going to be focusing on YouTube. So you're going to know what's what and what's happening and what's next and what's launching. So yeah, just connect with me on all of the things. But Instagram is most primary. TikTok has a weird-ish algorithm. It's not the best platform for really connecting and hanging out. So that's all I'm going to say on that. And that is why people on TikTok still tell people to DM me on Instagram, connect with me on Instagram. As much as we want to hate on Instagram, it still has a purpose. And I will end.